Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I lost my cab service business, and my parents lost their houses, my aunts and uncles lost their houses.
The losses are adding up. What flood victims are returning home to in Merritt. Also,
this case is so important.
Why one BC judge says jail isn't the answer for everyone caught dealing fentanyl. And
once we start to look for it, it is likely that we're going to find it.
More Omicron cases in BC, but it may not be cause for alarm.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Well, Merritt residents are returning home to quite the mess. Mud-filled basements and homes needing to be gutted from the flood damage. Brady Strachan was in the city today and has more on residents working to clean up and move on.
We're here in a neighborhood not far from the Coldwater River in Merritt that was severely impacted by the flood. The damage to homes here is just staggering. As you can see, people have been throwing out all of the belongings that were in their basements over the last couple of days. Everything from small appliances, carpets, furniture, all contaminated by the flood water. And mud is thick in people's homes. It's foul smelling and it's everywhere. The water came right up to the ceiling in many basements. We spoke to one extended family that has 4 homes in this neighborhood, all of them impacted by this flood.
It is heartbreaking. I mean, friends, I had family flying from Vancouver to come help us, and everybody's looking at the disaster here, and it looks like a war zone. It's like, what do you do?
His uncle's home is even worse off. There's thick mud in the basement, and now the family is trying to clean it all up before it freezes. He says he's lived in this neighborhood for more than 40 years and never seen any flooding anywhere like this before. This family's taxi business is also severely impacted. They lost 3 taxi cabs in the floodwaters, and their garage is now full of thick mud. They say the situation is just too much for them to handle on their own, and they really need some help.
It's a lot of work, right? We might be here for 1 year. By the time we can, because it's a safety issue. I don't walk in here myself. You know, you got your sewer, you got all this stuff in here.
Mold upstairs.
Mold, yeah, it's just like a total loss.
The province says disaster financial assistance is available to homeowners whose primary residence was impacted by the flood. People we've spoken to here say they're dealing with that application, ICBC applications, and then there's just the physical work of trying to do all this cleanup. They say it's just exhausting and they're overwhelmed. Brady Strachan, CBC News in Merritt.
It's a BC ruling that's being called groundbreaking by those who advocate for people struggling with drug addictions. A Vancouver Island judge broke years of precedent, ruling to place a woman on probation instead of behind bars for trafficking fentanyl. Isabel Regam explains why it may be a game changer for sentencing people caught dealing the deadly drug to support their own dependence.
It's being called a groundbreaking ruling by the Pivot Legal Society.
In a court system where we are bound by the doctrine of stare decisis, which means that we have to follow the rulings of higher courts except for very exceptional circumstances, that takes a lot of guts.
The decision centered around the testimony of Tanya Ellis, a 43-year-old woman who sold small amounts of fentanyl to an undercover RCMP officer in late 2019. The Crown was asking for a 3-year jail sentence, which aligns with the range set by BC's Court of Appeal in 2017 of 18 months to 36 months of sentence for first-time offenders convicted of trafficking fentanyl. Before 2017, precedent had been set about 6 months. But in this case, the judge placed Ellis on parole and ordered 30 hours of community service instead of any time in prison.
To continue throwing the book at people who deal drugs is not going to stop any of these things from happening.
So why did the Campbell River judge go against the BC's top court precedent? In part, the judge wrote several factors were considered, including that Ellis was selling drugs to support her own need for drugs rather than purely for greed or money. She was exposed to substances at an early age, which led to her addiction, and the relationship between her addiction and her life circumstances, which include significant past trauma, poverty, and mental health challenges. Also adding that Ellis had many, but ultimately unsuccessful, attempts at treatment in abstinence-based programs. And importantly, the judge pointed several times to BC's deadly drug supply and opioid crisis, and that a change in approach to punishment was warranted.
Folks like Ellis and criminal defense lawyers will begin to have a little bit more leverage in terms of future cases, especially in BC and potentially across Canada.
So once we have one judge stepping outside the box and sort of providing that leadership role, it's a lot easier for other judges to feel more comfortable engaging in that line of analysis.
Ellis's defense lawyer suspects the Crown will appeal the decision and says the case could go all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada, a court battle the team believes could have an impact on sentencing across the country. Isabel Regam, CBC News, Vancouver.
1 week after detecting the first case, 4 more people in BC are now positive with the Omicron variant of COVID-19, and health officials fully expect there will be more. Belle Puri is live with us tonight. Belle, what details do we know about these latest cases?
The 4 cases were identified over the weekend. 3 are in Vancouver Coastal Health and 1 in the Fraser Health region. That's also where the first case was found last week. Of the 5 in total, all of the cases are related to international travel. 3 of the people had been fully vaccinated with 3 different vaccination combinations. 2 were unvaccinated. All 5 people with the new variant are between the ages of 18 and 60.
We have a number of others that are suspect and pending that are likely to turn out to be this new variant as well. And I think that is not a surprise. As we've said, once we start to look for it, it is likely that we're going to find it. We know this virus travels quickly and it travels in people. And when people move, the virus strains move with them.
The new variant cases here so far are described as mild or asymptomatic. No one has been hospitalized. And the province is reporting 326 new cases of COVID since yesterday. As well, 1 more person has died.
Okay, and Belle, late last week there was talk about 4th doses of COVID shots for people. So what are we learning about that today?
For people who got a 3-dose primary series, yes, they'll be eligible for another shot 6 months after their 3rd dose. But will everyone need a 4th dose? No one can say for sure yet. Right now, the focus is to get 3rd doses, boosters, into people, especially those over 70. About 500,000 booster shots have been administered since September. Now, by next week, people over 65 should start to get invitations for their 3rd dose of vaccine. Sometimes, though, getting those shots can be a challenge. In Prince George yesterday, protesters shouted at and followed parents to vehicles outside a children's COVID-19 vaccination clinic. That's illegal under the province's new bubble zone law that came into effect last month. It established a 20-meter access zone around hospitals, COVID clinics, and schools. Violators could face arrest or a $2,300 fine.
We recognize, of course, that there are differing opinions in society, and people do have the right to express those opinions. We also have the obligation to ensure that healthcare staff and vaccine clinic patrons feel safe and able to access services and do their work without being obstructed or confronted or made to feel unsafe.
There were no arrests at yesterday's incident. Protesters were simply warned.
Belle Puri live for us tonight. Thank you. A controversial move by Vancouver police tonight. The force will not be requiring its officers to be vaccinated against COVID-19, despite mandates for healthcare workers, firefighters, and BC's government employees. Officers and staff are encouraged to get immunized and provide proof by the end of December. Unvaccinated officers will have to undergo frequent rapid testing at their own cost to be considered fit for duty.
We've already lost more than 20 police officers who have patched over to the New Surrey Police Service. We're still dealing with not being able to hire 61 additional recruits as a result of the budget reduction in last year's budget. So quite frankly, we're stretched thin, and we can't afford not to have, we can't afford to lose more police officers from the front lines.
While the VPD is funded by the city, its employer is the Vancouver Police Board. Vancouver city staff and firefighters have until January 6th to prove they are vaccinated. And a Fort St. John woman who fought through COVID-19 in a coma during pregnancy and nearly died has returned home. Crystal Bennett and her husband now regret their anti-vax stance after delivering a premature baby during a medically induced coma. The child remains in hospital in New Westminster. Bennett now hopes her story will encourage others to get vaccinated. Back in October, Bennett was unvaccinated and 25 weeks pregnant. After contracting COVID-19, she was rushed to hospital more than 800 kilometers away and given a 10% chance of survival. Well, 3 Indigenous organizations and the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops have postponed next week's planned visit to the Vatican. The trip was to request for Pope Francis to visit Canada to deliver an apology for the Church's role in running residential schools. As Juanita Taylor reports, the decision was made because of concerns around the new Omicron variant.
The Assembly of First Nations, Inuit Teperi Kanatami, and the Métis National Council, including the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops, said in a joint news release today that they are postponing their meeting with the Pope in Rome, citing concerns about the uncertainty and potential health risks surrounding international travel amid the recent spread of the Omicron variant. Now, many of the delegates are elders who live in remote communities. The release states the fluid nature of the evolving global situation presents too great a threat at this time.
We have a duty to keep our communities safe, and so we're happy that it is being postponed. We have commitment from the CCCB as well as the higher ups over at the Vatican that it is a huge priority for the Pope, for the Holy Father, to have these delegations visit him to share the stories of our people.
Now, the delegates have been working on their message for the Pope over the last few months, including asking him to come to Canada to deliver an apology for the Catholic Church's role in running residential schools. Now, the pressure to apologize is being greatly felt, especially after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's final report was released and since the discoveries of unmarked graves at residential school sites. Now, back in October, the Canadian Council of Bishops did say that the Pope will come to Canada at a later date. Now, if that visit includes delivering an apology, we don't know yet. But that is something that the delegates who were going to go to Rome next week were hoping to find out. Now, that meeting between Indigenous groups and the Pope is being rescheduled to sometime in 2022, but a new date for that meeting has not yet been decided. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Yellowknife.
A missing teenager has been found dead on a home in Tawassen on First Nation land. The 17-year-old was reported missing on Sunday. Police say she was last seen by family members last Friday. A man has been arrested in connection with the teen's death. BC's health minister says it is completely unacceptable that a woman posing as a nurse managed to assist with surgeries for more than a year. Bridget Claro is facing charges of impersonation and fraud in BC and Ontario after it was discovered she worked at BC Women's Hospital. She cared for patients from June of 2020 to June of 2021. Claro has a long list of convictions for similar crimes and has never held a valid nursing license. Vancouver police say she used the name of a real nurse to get a job at the Vancouver hospital. Claro appeared in a Vancouver court this morning, and the hearing was held over until January. Well, thieves have struck a Vancouver area charity for the second time in less than a year, making off with a catalytic converter from a much-needed delivery truck. Home Start Foundation picks up donated furniture and delivers to those in need. But when the director heard a familiar loud bang coming from the parking lot this morning, she knew the driver wasn't going anywhere. Thieves managed to get away with a converter back in May. It took 6 weeks and $6,500 to replace.
There should be serial numbers, there should be tracking, there should be a way that this can't be sold at a scrap metal place by somebody who's riding around cutting them off of vehicles.
Stephenson says they've made an ICBC claim, but she's concerned about the people the charity won't be able to serve this holiday season. Well, a viral trend on TikTok has Surrey RCMP concerned.
Acá está el inodoro que habla.
Police say over the last few months, they've received multiple calls of vandalism to public washroom facilities, particularly in the Cloverdale area. The damage includes smashed toilets, broken doors, partitions, vents, as well as stolen soap dispensers. Surrey RCMP believe it could be related to a TikTok trend where young people film themselves vandalizing washrooms. Police say they will be patrolling parks around Surrey and keeping a close eye on bathroom facilities. And Burnaby's Stony Creek has been named one of the province's most endangered urban streams by Outdoor Recreation Council of BC, and that's following a mass fish kill event this summer. The association says a murky discharge found flowing into the stream was linked to the death of hundreds of young salmon and other fish species. Over the past few years, salmon have been returning to the stream to spawn, with stream keepers counting more than 1,000 chum and a few coho last year. Surrey's Little Campbell River is also known and also made the list because of the city's plans to rezone and develop hundreds of acres of land near the riverside. Time now to check in with meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. And Joe, I know you've got your hood on, but today felt like it was like, I put my hood on, take it off, put my hood on, take it off.
I've been doing that in the few minutes I've been standing out here. Yes, it's like a cloud is hugging me today. And that was the general sentiment across the South Coast. Drizzle, the good old 0.2 to 0.5 millimeter diameter raindrops that seem to make you more wet than the heavy rain sometimes. Let me show you the big picture, because the drizzle is coming to a dramatic end as a cold front sweeps through in the next couple of hours. But yes, it is generally wet with a westerly flow bringing in that Pacific moisture. There's actually a couple of cold fronts hitting our province. So I just want to take you up north where we do have snowfall warnings in place. Terrace, 10 to 20 centimeters. Same story over towards Prince George, Pine Pass. And then Kitimat, 10 centimeters plus freezing rain. So very stormy next 24 hours as that system tracks west to east. The southern half of the province, though, it's really just the south coast that'll see clearing skies but gusty winds. So I'm just taking you through the early morning hours. I think we'll see a dramatic clear out sort of by 8, 9, 10 a.m. across Metro Vancouver, but it is going to come with some good wind gusts. We could see, especially by the water, gusts overnight tonight and early tomorrow between 50 and maybe 70 kilometers per hour. But Anita, we will be rewarded by a beautiful blue sky Wednesday. I've got more of everything in the forecast. We'll get you there a little later on in the show.
Okay, talk to you soon, Joe.
Thanks.
Well, some grade 3 and 5 students in Abbotsford have written letters of thank you to members of the Canadian Armed Forces for helping with the city's flood response. The plan was for Mayor Henry Braun to hand-deliver the letters to soldiers on the ground. A total of 75 were written and dropped off at City Hall. The kids' teachers say the students have been talking a lot about the floods and how bad they feel for the people who are affected. Some even have families that are staying with them after being forced out of their homes.
The students really felt good about being able to thank them, because many of them either were affected or had family members or friends that were affected by the floods. So it was very relevant to them and personal. So it was a really good feeling for them. They felt like they were giving the soldiers, I guess, energy to keep going and stuff like that, they were saying.
Such a great initiative from the students at Dr. Roberta Bondar Elementary School in Abbotsford. And beyond that, there's more proof tonight that British Columbians truly step up to help people in their communities that are in need. An annual top 10 ranking of Canada's most charitable cities finds North Vancouver, Vancouver, Kamloops, and Kelowna in the top 5. More than $2.5 million in donations came in following the historic wildfires and devastating floods. Hundreds of thousands more raised for victims and family members after the deadly stabbing at a North Vancouver library. Similarly, after a deadly crane collapse in Kelowna, and over $150,000 raised to help uncover mass graves of Indigenous children after the initial discovery at a residential school in Kamloops. The report was released by GoFundMe. And if you haven't visited North Vancouver's Shipyards district in a while, well, it may look a little different. The area has seen a boom in development over the past few years, turning it into not just a commercial center, but also a community. Joel Ballard takes a look at both the neighborhood's history and its future.
The waterfront at the edge of Lonsdale has long played an important role. First, the traditional lands of the Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh.
Gradually over time, you will see a real transformation from a natural environment to a built environment.
At the turn of the century, it became a transportation link to Vancouver, as well as the home of the shipyards, where more than 450 vessels were built between 1906 and 1992. At its height,
there were probably 12,000 people working in the shipyards. Many of them you can see behind us, 1,000 women in those days, immigration from all over the world.
And as the shipyard's production grew, so did the commercial sector that built up around it. Today, that center of commerce still exists, now home to more than 800 businesses that employ north of 2,000 people.
We've created a 10-minute city in this little area now where you can step out of your building and within 10 minutes find everything you want.
Over the past few years, a flurry of development. New high-rises, restaurants, hotels, and even a skating rink, sheltered by the same structure where vessels were long produced.
It's a gathering place for the community. My office actually looks out onto the south side of the plaza, and I see the same people in the same chairs every day having their coffees.
Perhaps the most iconic building within the Shipyards district, the Lonsdale Quay Market. Although many lovingly agree, it's in need of a facelift.
We've got some pretty exciting plans that we've been working on for quite a few years actually to revitalize Lonsdale Quay Market.
The footprint slightly expanded, the inside reconfigured, and a cosmetic overhaul of the exterior. But more than a redesign, it's a reimagining of the market, with later hours that offer more opportunity for connection and culture. But at its core, Matheson says it will still focus on local businesses.
It's really the experts behind the counter that really makes Lonsdale Quay so different.
It's the final piece of the Shipyards District revitalization puzzle, set for completion by fall 2022. Joel Ballard, CBC News, North Vancouver.
Trying to understand the risks, researchers rush to analyze the Omicron variant and what it might mean. We take you inside a lab next. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. A small project in New Brunswick is helping people break the ice. The Happy to Chat bench is everything its name promises. People can either sit and enjoy the silence or strike up a conversation with a stranger. Here's how the bench is helping bring people closer together.
The Happy to Chat bench just, puts a smile to your face, I guess, when you want to say it. So the idea came from our director, and then we had a couple of residents that saw it somewhere else and brought it forward to us, and so we decided, well, it's a good idea, so let's jump on it, and created some signs and posted them up, and it's starting to slowly gain some traction with people.
Well, it's actually a great idea. There's a lot of seniors that hang out here. You see that even, they'll grab a coffee from McDonald's or something and go sit down. And even through COVID, you're seeing still some of it, certainly more distance. So it's not as free will as it used to be. Normally, if you're sitting on the bench, people would just kind of sit down and chat because it's really a close community here in Riverview. But it's I'm starting to see as I'm walking and biking the trails that people are starting to use them even more and more. There's definitely a growing comfort level there.
We've got 2 spots on the riverfront, so we have this spot here and then one further down by one of our flower beds closer to Gunnersville Bridge. So that one is it's kind of set back off the trail, so it's more, inviting for people who are here, like if you're to sit, like it forces people to talk here. The other one is just more off if you want to be, off by yourself. So.
Well, mental health is a big thing, right? So there's certainly been some a growth in awareness to make sure when there are things happening. There was the anti-bullying walk, the rally that just happened last weekend. Just some different things encourage people to get out, but get out safely, make sure you're looking after yourself and staying connected, So the benches really do help with that.
Just to get out and stop and say hello, like even a simple hello to someone that's having a bad day means a lot to some people, right? So, I think that's the message that we like to spread with people is, take a minute just to say hello instead of just walking by with your head down.
The Omicron variant continues to pop up in BC and across Canada. 4 new cases in this province today, all linked to international travel. Now, it's still too early to know how dangerous Omicron is, but Victopia has spoken with Canadian scientists teasing out its real-world capabilities about what they see and why they are urging caution.
At this secure Toronto lab, they're growing what could be the most contagious strain of the coronavirus yet, to study what kind of threat Omicron actually poses. Scientists know the variant has more mutations to the virus's spike than in previous strains. But deciphering what all those adaptations mean is painstaking work.
We can't just look at one and say, oh, because of the mutation at 501, we know this is going to happen because it happened with Alpha or with Delta. So that's why we have to look at it in the whole thing in context, which is why we have to do all the work in high containment labs.
Researchers are also studying the growing number of people testing positive for Omicron to answer 3 critical questions. Whether it's more transmissible, does it lead to more severe illness, and is it more resistant to our immune responses, especially in vaccinated people?
We need to see multiple cases. We need to review the charts. We need to compare it to patients who have the other variants to get sort of a bit of an idea. That obviously that takes time.
According to the latest data from South Africa, hospitals reported they saw a rapidly growing number of mostly unvaccinated patients infected by Omicron, suggesting higher transmissibility, but their symptoms were milder compared to previous waves, news that has fueled both hope and skepticism.
I take all that with a grain of salt because we've seen anecdotal stuff come out on previous variants, and it turns out not to be the case. And at the end of the day, most of the variants seem to present with a pretty similar clinical picture, but we'll see.
For now, it's the Delta variant still driving the numbers. Since it took over this summer, more than 3,000 Canadians have died from COVID-19, overwhelmingly unvaccinated. Victopia, CBC News, Toronto.
Yeah, south of the border, as the U.S. moves toward 50 million cases, there is growing concern with that variant. But as Katie Simpson tells us, while all eyes are on the Omicron, like Vic said, Delta continues to spread, and that's leading to a warning for Canadians.
This is make or break time across the service industry. Holiday bookings are being finalized, but with COVID cases surging yet again, Steve Forbes wonders how many of those parties will actually happen in his restaurant.
Offices are now tasked with the decision, do we do it, do we not do it? And I think it's like that whole angel devil, and I think most people want to do it. People want to go out, people want to travel. It's happening.
The U.S. is averaging over 100,000 new cases per day, up 28% over the past 2 weeks. Right now, there are roughly 1,100 daily COVID deaths. If that pace continues, more than 800,000 Americans will have died from COVID before the new year. And while the Omicron variant has been confirmed in 19 states, 99% of all COVID cases in this country are the Delta strain.
We have a major Delta surge, and if you are not vaccinated, Delta will find you, and you will get sick, and you may end up in the hospital, and you may end up dying.
About 64% of Americans over the age of 5 are fully vaccinated, and the White House says it's encouraged by the uptake of the booster program.
There has been an increase in boosting by people over the past week plus, 1 million people a day, and we're continuing to make sure they're accessible around the country.
But the rising cases, especially in some northern states, are so concerning it's prompting a warning in some parts of Canada. The Thunder Bay District Health Unit is recommending that all residents avoid non-essential travel to Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan because of their high case rates, and the public health measures are generally looser than the rules at home.
These COVID numbers are expected to get worse through the holiday travel season. But for now, the White House is not calling for restrictions or lockdowns, focusing instead on testing and getting more shots into arms. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
To our CBC News investigation series examining intimate partner violence now. As Shayna Luck reports, some advocates are suggesting coercive control should be covered by Canada's criminal code. A warning, there are graphic and disturbing details of violence in this report.
In the weeks before a murder devastated people in her Halifax social circle, Ardith Wynot began to worry about two people she knew socially, a high school friend, Nicholas Butcher, and the woman he was dating, Kristen Johnston. She knew Butcher was not doing well.
A period of unemployment, obvious depression, and definitely disclosing to friends that he was depressed, and the impending separation of a relationship.
The relationship went terribly wrong. In March 2016, Nicholas Butcher stabbed and killed Kristen Johnston. Johnston's friends and family later testified she felt trapped and frightened in her relationship, but no one knew what they could do to help. That kind of fear can be caused by something called coercive control.
It's not as hard to recognize coercive control as people might think that it is, because it is a pattern of behaviors that make someone feel afraid.
Coercive control can involve humiliation, intimidation, or isolating the victim from others. It doesn't necessarily involve physical violence. Some believe it should be a criminal offense, and there is currently a bill before the House to that effect. But some say, don't go too fast. This lawyer worries women who defend themselves from an abusive partner might themselves be accused of coercive control, or that such a law would hurt marginalized families who are already overrepresented in the justice system.
Laws can always backfire on the people they are intended to protect. What we want to urge is that we proceed slowly, cautiously.
Ardith Wynot believes that Kristen Johnston fell into a coercive, controlling relationship, but doesn't believe a law could have helped.
Coercive control laws would not have saved Kristen Johnston's life. I don't believe personally that Kristen knew the amount of danger that she was in.
Wynot believes interventions like abusers counseling are underfunded, and she believes in general if people begin to speak out more about warning signs, lives will be saved. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Halifax.
After a summer of heat here in BC and record floods, climate change is hitting this province hard. But half a world away in Kenya, the impact is being felt as well. We take you there next.
The scene was Toy City in the Guildford Mall. The doors here don't open until 9:30 a.m., but people began lining up long before that. Inside the quiet store, 300 Cabbage Patch Kids were waiting on prominent display. Some people have been willing to pay hundreds of dollars for the dolls. These ones today were selling for $29.99. Outside, the line began growing a dozen people at a time. Other shoppers couldn't make it, so they phoned the store and tried unsuccessfully to have a doll or two stashed aside for them. And they used all kinds of excuses.
That's right. You get the one calling with the little girl who's an orphan and looks just like a Cabbage Patch doll and wants one herself. And
you've heard a lot of stories.
We've heard them all, just about.
Back outside in the mall itself, the lineup was now even longer as the shoppers and the staff tensed up for the rush. Have you tried before to get a Cabbage Patch doll?
Well, when I started my Christmas shopping, they had lots of them in the stores, and I figured they'd be around, so I didn't bother getting one, and then all of a sudden they were all gone.
Yeah.
So.
How about you? Do you want a doll? What kind of a doll?
Cabbage Patch.
I got two girls, and we've been looking all over for them. We've been phoned some friends in England, and they're all gone there, so this is our last chance.
Then it was 9:30. The doors opened and people were at first fairly orderly. Then one of them grabbed a shopping cart and the rush was on. It took only 4 minutes to clear the shelves. Some people took more than they needed. Then they had a change of heart.
There's a lady here that didn't get one, and then I'm going to give her one.
How many have you got?
I took 4, but I need 3, really.
Smurfs. They come in all shapes and sizes and cost anywhere from $2 to $99. This Christmas, they're topping the list for toy sales. There are Smurf mugs, puzzles, games, keychains, buttons, and even Smurf records. But the real prize is a Smurf doll. And this is a problem because they're scarce. The demand for Smurf dolls has been so overwhelming that every department store in Halifax, Dartmouth is completely sold out.
Do you still have people come in and ask for them?
Oh, yes. Get them all the time on the phone. They say there's just none available anywhere.
The company responsible for distributing Smurfs, Gantz Brothers of Toronto, is being flooded with requests from store owners for new shipments. But even the distributor is out of Smurfs, and new orders won't be filled before Christmas. This lady had no luck in the big department stores in Metro, but she struck Smurfs at a small gift shop in the Halifax Shopping Centre.
This is my 4th store this afternoon. Yes, and I've not seen any. And before that, to find Grandpa and True Friend was impossible.
What makes them so special?
I don't know. The kids love them. I haven't been able to figure it out yet.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News. 4 more people have tested positive in BC for the Omicron variant, bringing our total to 5. All of the cases are linked to international travel, and the people range in age from 18 to 60. Some are unvaccinated, but some do have their shots.
And to continue throwing the book at people who deal drugs is not going to stop any of these things from happening.
A Vancouver Island judge says courts need to reconsider automatic jail sentences for people caught dealing fentanyl to support their own drug addictions. She's broken with years of precedent set by the province's top court, suspending a sentence for a woman facing up to 3 years in jail for trafficking fentanyl and placing her on probation instead. The defense lawyer who won the case says the ruling has the potential to be groundbreaking. Over the past couple of months, many in BC have lost their homes because of the extreme weather. Halfway across the world, a similar situation is unfolding. Margaret Evans is in Kenya, where the changing climate is forcing people to abandon how they've lived for decades.
There is, on the edges of Kenya's Lake Nakuru, an eerie new world taking shape. One caught in flickering glimpses between the dead trees of a drowned forest and in the waters that swallowed up people's homes over a year ago now. Jane Wanjiru is taking us to see what's left of hers.
We thought it was just to come, and then after 6 months or 3 months, the water will go back.
But it didn't, sinking her dreams. Wanjiru had fought her way out of the slums and the single room she'd shared there with her 2 children to be able to buy something she could call her own.
When you come from very low and then you get something that you feel like you are proud of it, and then a disaster like this comes, you feel very bad, very bad.
Especially when there is no answer to calls for help. Over 200 households, most like Wanjiru's, were lost to the flooding here in Wariki. All are still waiting for compensation. David Kiragu bought his land in 1972, a small-scale farmer. He says he doesn't know how to start over again at his age and suffers from depression.
We are blaming people because they have interfered with the environment, especially even the other countries, because industries and all this.
Lake Nakuru lies in the Great Rift Valley, where flooding in a string of lakes has displaced thousands. Massive deforestation has made it worse, and seismic activity could be affecting groundwater levels. But most scientists agree climate change is an amplifier.
The reason why we think climate change could really be playing a role is because these sort of trends have really been accelerated in the past few decades. So there wasn't this before.
The lake has gone from some 40 square kilometers to 70, past the border of Nakuru National Park, which used to enclose it. Lines now blurred over who can fish where, and drawing unemployed youth desperate for a living.
What some officials at the county level have told us they'd like to see is for the government to come in and buy the land, even though it's underwater, as a way of compensating people who've lost their homes, and then to give the land to the national park, which is also under enormous pressure from the expansion of the lake.
Safari roads around it have been washed out, and available habitat for wild animals has shrunk, pushing them closer to human settlements. Flamingos on the lake still offer a picture of seemingly infinite beauty, but what lies beneath is turning deadly. Nakuru used to draw 1 million flamingos a year, but far fewer now. The salinity of the lake diluted, and so too the algae the flamingos feed on. As for the fish those young men are trying to catch, they're showing high levels of chemicals. For Kenya, climate change is a house of cards, and it hasn't stopped tumbling yet. To the north and east in Laikipia, in the shadow of Mount Kenya, the land is thirsty. And competition for it is growing. It's not easy to sneak 100 head of cattle on or off private land, but that's what's happening here through a cut fence, illegal grazing. Pastoralists who run cattle for a living say the failure of seasonal rains has made it a matter of life or death for their herds. Samuel Pareri is a member of the Maasai tribe.
Because we don't have a place to go and our cow are dying, so we see that this is the only place we can get grass.
The Maasai way of life, traditionally nomadic, is already under pressure to shift to sedentary farming and adopt drought-resistant crops. Joachim Kuraru is not a typical herder. A former teacher who works for an aid agency, he and his family still keep a small herd of cattle, but they've also been trying their hand at farming with limited success.
An elephant came through this fence here. You can see the fence. The first season I actually planted, they were all destroyed by elephants.
Laikipia is home to the second largest elephant population in Kenya, along with a dozen wildlife conservancies and several ranches, still associated by many with the colonial days of white British rule.
People are coming up with the notion of conservation as a neo-colonialism. That is what we are thinking. Because people, they value, wild animals are valued more than us.
Abraham Jenga is a wildlife manager with a conservancy called Old Bajeta, 90,000 acres of grassland devoted to sustainable conservation. Some elephants have been raiding crops in a farming settlement next to the wildlife reserve, and he's on his way.
The idea we're trying is to push them back to the conservation area.
They've decided to bring in a helicopter, but even then, it's a challenge. At one point, an elephant seems to be trying to charge it. The helicopter lands to pick up Jenga, who fire blanks into the air. In the end, they only manage to redirect 2. It can be distressing to watch, but Jenga says it's for their own protection.
Actually, human-wildlife conflict is becoming even a bigger challenge now, seemingly even more than poaching, because we don't want people to retaliate.
The Conservancy sits right at the equator on Mount Kenya's western side. It boasts the so-called Big Five animals on its safaris and turns those tourist dollars back into conservation and, it says, into community jobs. But the growth in farming all around is threatening already endangered species.
We are losing the wildlife migration routes and the corridors as well. Even the dispersal areas that we used to have to the south, now most of these parts, they are all settled.
Add to the mix the pastoralists fleeing drought, demanding access to Conservancy watering holes and pastures, sometimes just taking it, and the gathering storm on the horizon becomes clear. The one thing uniting them is the same thing driving them: fear. To change cultures and ways of life, to anticipate and adapt to the extremes of climate change is an enormous task for any country, and Kenya is already facing battle on more than one front. On the ground, it feels like it's fighting it alone. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Kenya.
A rare condition has a Toronto family scrambling to find answers. Why a 19-month-old baby has regular seizures? That's next. And it's 6:46. You are looking at a live look at Grouse Mountain tonight, engulfed by the clouds, but plenty of snow on the ground. Cold, clear weather is on its way down here as well. Johanna breaks down what you expect next.
It's Gary the Unicorn here.
And I'm Huggles.
Yeah, and we're here for Jam Sandwich.
No, Gary, it's called Jam or Not a Jam.
Well, when's the jam coming?
Well, it's not... You know what? After this, let's have snack, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Oh. So far, so good.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice, isn't it?
Very drummy.
Makes me feel like dancing a bit. Ooh, I like that.
Feels like I'm at the beach.
It's so happy. I was born a unicorn. Did you just hear that?
I did.
They said unicorn.
Oh, yes, that's definitely a jam.
Jam.
Yes, jam, 100%.
Don't know why, but jam. Oh, I like this.
Oh.
Kind of makes me feel like I wanna move my hooves. Oh, I like this. What do you think, Huggles?
Oh, I think it's a good one.
Yeah, you know what? Makes me feel like prancing.
Let's prance.
Prance. Prance. Prance like a pony. Prance like a pony.
Prance.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I say jam.
Oh, definitely a jam.
Yeah, this
it
song.
It is all right.
Yeah, this song is all right.
It's, it's very loud, isn't it?
Yeah, turn it down.
Yes, kind of, bangy and clattery.
Do you like it?
You know what? I appreciate what they're trying to do, and I respect it.
Okay. All right.
I'm not sure it's my jam.
It's so loud. I'm gonna go out here.
Yes, it's more of a jelly situation.
Tell me when it's off!
Okay.
If it's a jam or a jelly, it's a slow jelly, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very slow jelly.
Let's just bring it down.
Yeah.
Makes me want to come and snuggle.
Yeah. Oh, Gaines. You feeling a little emotional?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm feeling a little jammy.
Yeah. Feelings can be complicated sometimes.
Feeling a little jammy?
Yeah. Definitely jammy.
In my heart. Sing it, Avril! Sing it!
Oh. Yes.
Jam.
Definitely a jam. Mm-hmm.
Jam. Well, this has been Jam or Not a Jam with Gary
and Huggles.
And we think this was pretty fun.
Yeah, it was a good time. Although I am feeling like a little bit of jam myself.
Yeah, I am too. You know what? All that dancing and jamming and not jamming has made my stomach hungry for jam.
Yes, why don't we go get a snack?
Okay, you just wait there. I will go prepare something.
Oh, okay.
Even though our cushion fort doesn't really even have a kitchen.
I'm gonna play that unicorn one again.
Maybe we can call and deliver.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is here, putting on your seismologist hat today, talking about this cluster of earthquakes south of the border. What's going on there?
Yes, Anita, if anyone else like myself has set their earthquake app to the Pacific Northwest, it's been going off today. Now, all of the earthquakes have been well offshore, but take a look at the cluster that I've been tracking. We've seen over a dozen. You can see there in the yellow, red, and orange circles. The red indicate the most recent in time. In fact, just another magnitude 5.0 earthquake striking. So over the past 24 hours, we've seen over a dozen of these at depths of about 10 kilometers, the highest one being magnitude 5.8. So well enough offshore that we're not seeing any shaking on land, and also no tsunami threat. But that is a large cluster, and because we do live in an actively seismic zone, maybe some of you are thinking some things. This is what we call the Blanco transition zone, and generally this is not an area of concern because this is actually what's known as a transform fault. So the two plate boundaries are going side by side, sort of like the San Andreas, but well offshore. So this is not part of our Cascadia subduction zone. But anytime we see these clusters, and they do happen from time to time, a reminder that we do live in an active seismic zone, and never a bad idea when earthquakes make the news to think about your own plan and your own kit. But don't be surprised if your earthquake app continues to go off through the overnight. We've got two cold fronts, as I mentioned, one bringing us some winds overnight. That's what we'll be tracking here in the Pacific Northwest. Gusts to 60, 70 kilometers per hour. Just wanted to show you the pulses of moisture I'm tracking over the next couple of days. So actually clearing out through Wednesday. I think we'll see some good sunshine Wednesday and Thursday. It's Friday that another system will move in, also bringing some big winds and some more steady rain Friday through Saturday. But tomorrow, much of the province catching a bit of a break, other than Prince George through the morning hours, and then back over towards Stewart and Kitimat. That's where you're getting good snow overnight. Kelowna, it's been a gray past 24 hours, and look for another gray one down in your neck of the woods. 7 for Vancouver's high tomorrow. Showers might return tomorrow evening, but generally we'll see a lovely blue sky, breezy day. A little cooler on Thursday as we get those northwesterly winds settle in. Then the next big rainmaker moves in for Friday and Saturday. Not an atmospheric river. This is a wind event. So I'll be watching that, Anita. We could see some wind warnings just in time for the weekend.
Okay, and I do like that little sun poking out through on Saturday. So
I made sure to give it some good space. Yes.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
A Toronto couple is searching for answers for their 19-month-old daughter. Now, she's among only a handful of Canadian kids with a rare genetic disorder that causes life-threatening seizures. Not much is known about it, and there's no cure. But as Anita Bathe explains, now there is hope.
Good work.
Keep going.
Each step with her walker is an achievement for Maddie Kilner. She has an extremely rare and serious genetic disorder called SCN8A. It causes epilepsy and developmental delays. She was just 4 months old when she had her first seizure.
I was just walking by the room like I normally do, and I heard a rustle, and I went inside, and Maddie was just lying there with her eyes staring straight back, and I couldn't get her to come back, and I yelled for Cam. We called 911, and then that really was when everything changed for us.
Maddie has spent the last year in and out of Toronto's Sick Kids Hospital. She now takes 16 syringes of medication a day to control her seizures, and her parents are determined to find better treatments.
We really want to help find a cure. I mean, it's a very scary diagnosis with so many unknowns, and because it's so rare, it's really important that we do research to try and understand it better.
In 1 week, they've raised more than $80,000 for sick kids to run the first Canadian study on SCN8A.
We're just absolutely blown away by the support from absolutely everyone, and it means the world to us.
One Sick Kids doctor is hopeful the research will help them better treat and understand not only Maddie's rare disorder, but more common genetic conditions too.
We do think that the insights we've gotten so far from studying these genetic types of epilepsy have given us more insights into epilepsy overall.
He's also hoping to understand why Maddie and other kids with this disorder experience developmental delays.
One of the things that I'm hoping the research can accomplish in Maddie's case is to better understand what are the additional predictors or factors that seem to make that happen.
In the meantime, Maddie's parents are focusing on every small milestone she hits.
I would describe her as very determined.
Like standing and pointing.
It makes it even more motivating to really help research for Maddie and all the other amazing SCN8A families we've met.
Samantha Beatty, CBC News, Toronto.
There might be a rush on real Christmas trees here in BC, but in Germany, one man is feeling no tree pinch at all. His world record display is coming up.
I can't believe it's been a year. I thought, wouldn't it be a hoot to just write a different Christmas song every week for a year? And maybe not every single one of them would be great, but maybe one of them would. And then I hadn't thought of that idea in years. I thought, well, I'm just gonna do it. And so like in about 10 minutes, I set up a blog. It's beautiful to me. That's what I always find with any sort of creative project. If you declare publicly you're doing it, you got to do it. So that's what I did, and so every week since then. Little bird upon my feeder. But then you start getting to like March and April, and you get some sunny days, and you're not thinking about Christmas because you know what? It's a long time away. So I started doing things like very consciously thinking about Christmas, and thinking about what the special things are about Christmas, and so I realized that I have to keep the songs simple so that people can learn them and re-sing them easily and you recognize them immediately, relatable, and it had to trigger nostalgia. On Christmas Day. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just churning out the same song over and over and over and over again. And so I did think about that, and if I had done several weeks where they were kind of like I would be really happy for a couple weeks doing these sort of somber memory stories. And then one week I would wake up and say, I want to write a song that's not a bummer. Let's write something really fun about socks. I want socks for Christmas. And so I would write the song about socks for Christmas. I want socks for Christmas. It's the only thing I want a pair. And then I remembered, oh my gosh, there were a couple years where I was sick at Christmas. I should write a song about being sick at Christmas. So I called that one the Man Cold Carol. I caught a cold on Christmas Eve. Though the amazing thing is that having a project like that, it focuses what you're going to be writing about. So there's no such thing as writer's block because, well, I mean, it's just a Christmas song. Give me a call on Boxing Day. Literally one of the songs, I sat down on my piano, had no idea what to do, and just went, this is a song about Christmas, and it turned into kind of a fun little ditty. This is a song
about Christmas.
And like the thing that I kept saying was, maybe just one time, quality can be a byproduct of quantity. That I've just written so many songs that I'm gonna write one that endures. I light the way at Christmas time. My hope with this entire project was that I was gonna write something that lasted, that had a legacy. So I guess what, for me, is success is that maybe in 5 years or 10 years, one of these songs is one that your family sings. Or maybe it's one that when you hear it on the radio, you get that feeling that it's Christmas.
So if you're looking to beat the world record for having the most Christmas trees in one place, here's how. You just need to have one more than this couple in Germany. The current record holders want to keep their top spot this year, too. A judge from the German World Record Institute visited their house to do a head count. Yep, 444 trees decorated lovingly with ornaments, tinsel, and lights. Now, he says size doesn't matter when it comes to having the most number of Christmas trees in one place. No one has stepped forward to threaten their world dominance yet. We do have 2 more weeks before Christmas. Not sure I'll be challenging that record. At this point, we are in the toddler stage, which means no ornaments at all on the tree, just lights. Thanks so much for watching CBC Vancouver News tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow.